The notification chimed on my phone at exactly 8:47 p.m. on a Friday night. Sabrina's message was brief. Helping Mom with some stuff tonight. Back tomorrow morning. Love you. I stared at the screen, sitting in my recliner with a beer growing warm in my hand. 22 years of marriage teaches you to read between the lines, and something about this felt off. Sabrina never volunteered to help her mother with anything. Hell, she complained every time we had to visit the woman. My name's Jack Morrison, and I've been fixing cars for most of my adult life. I own Morrison's Auto Repair on the south side of town, built it from nothing with my own 2 hands and a lot of 16-hour days. I'm good at reading problems, whether they're under a hood or in a marriage. I called Sabrina's mom, Helen, just to check. The phone rang 4 times before her gravelly voice answered. Hello, Jack. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Helen. Sabrina said she was coming over to help you with something. Just wanted to make sure you didn't need anything else. There was a pause. A long one. Help me with what? I'm fine, Jack. I haven't talked to Sabrina since last weekend. My stomach dropped. I thanked Helen and hung up, then opened the location app on my phone. Sabrina and I had shared locations years ago when our daughter Emma started driving. Just for safety, we'd said. The little blue dot showed Sabrina's phone at the downtown Hilton. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, processing what this meant. My wife of 22 years was lying to me about where she was spending the night. The Hilton wasn't exactly a place you went alone. By 9:30, I was dressed and in my truck, driving toward Helen's house. If Sabrina was going to use her mother as an alibi, then Helen deserved to know about it. Helen lived in a small ranch house about 15 minutes from us, in a neighborhood where people still left their doors unlocked. I knocked softly, not wanting to wake the neighbors. Jack, what are you doing here? Helen opened the door in her bathrobe, looking genuinely confused. We need to talk, Helen, about Sabrina. I showed her the text message and explained about the location. Helen's face went through several emotions: confusion, understanding, and then something that looked like cold fury. She used me as her excuse? Looks that way. Helen stepped aside to let me in. Her kitchen smelled like coffee and the lingering scent of whatever she'd cooked for dinner. She poured us both a cup and sat down across from me at her small table. How long do you think this has been going on? She asked. I don't know. Maybe a while. Looking back, there have been signs. Helen nodded grimly. The late nights at work, the new clothes, the way she's been acting at family dinners. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the situation. Then Helen stood up and walked to the phone. What are you doing? Calling my daughter. Helen dialed Sabrina's number and waited. I could hear it ringing through the speaker. Mom? What's wrong? Is everything okay? Sabrina's voice sounded breathless, like she'd been interrupted. There's a family emergency, Sabrina. I need you to come over right now. Right now? Mom, it's almost 10 o'clock and I'm really tired. Right now, Sabrina. It's important. Helen hung up and looked at me. She'll be here in 20 minutes. Probably takes her that long to get dressed and figure out what lie to tell. I had to admire the old woman's steel. Helen had never been my biggest fan. She'd always thought Sabrina could have done better than a mechanic. But she had a strong sense of right and wrong. You want me to leave before she gets here? No. I want you right here at this table when she walks through that door. 23 minutes later, we heard Sabrina's car in the driveway. Helen and I were sitting calmly at the kitchen table, coffee cups in front of us like we were having a normal late-night chat. Sabrina's key turned in the lock, and she called out as she entered. Mom, what's the emergency? She stopped dead when she saw me sitting at the table. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know: guilt, panic, and the quick calculation of someone trying to figure out how much trouble they were in. Hi, honey, I said calmly. How was the Hilton? Sabrina's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked between Helen and me, clearly trying to figure out what we knew and what we didn't. I don't know what you mean. Helen spoke up, her voice cold as winter. Sit down, Sabrina. Mom, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Sit down. Sabrina sat. I pulled out my phone and showed her the location app, with her little blue dot still showing at the hotel. Want to try again? For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked like she was about to cry. Then something shifted in her expression, and I saw the Sabrina I'd been living with for the past few years, defensive, entitled, always looking for someone else to blame. You've been tracking me? That's a violation of my privacy, Jack. Helen slammed her coffee cup down so hard I thought it might break. Don't you dare turn this around on him. You used me as your alibi to go sleep with another man. How long has this been going on? It's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked. Because it looks like my wife lied to me about where she was going so she could spend the night at a hotel. What am I supposed to think? Sabrina was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, harder. I'm not happy, Jack. I haven't been happy for a long time. So you thought you'd work on that at the Hilton? Don't be sarcastic. This is serious. You're damn right it's serious. Helen stood up and walked to the counter, her back to both of us. When she turned around, her face was set like stone. I raised you better than this, Sabrina. Whatever problems you have in your marriage, this isn't how you handle them. You don't understand, Mom. You've never understood. Jack and I, we're different people than we were when we got married. We want different things. So you get a divorce, Helen said. You don't sneak around and lie and drag me into it. Sabrina looked at me then, and for just a second, I saw something that might have been regret. But it passed quickly. I want a separation, Jack. I figured that out when you decided to spend the night with someone else. His name is Brandon, and he understands me in ways you never have. The casual way she said it hit me harder than if she'd screamed it, like she'd been thinking about this conversation for a while, planning what she'd say. How long? I asked. Does it matter? It matters to me. Sabrina sighed like I was being unreasonable. 3 months. 3 months. I thought about the past 3 months, all the times she'd worked late, all the nights she'd been too tired to talk, all the weekends she'd found excuses to be somewhere else. Is he married? That's not your concern. Helen spoke up from the counter. Answer him, Sabrina. Yes, he's married, but they're having problems too. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. I bet they are now. I stood up and headed for the door. I'd heard enough for one night. Where are you going? Sabrina called after me. Home, to think about what I'm going to do next. Jack, wait. We need to talk about this. I turned back to her. No, we don't. You made your choice 3 months ago. Now I get to make mine. I left them in Helen's kitchen and drove home through empty streets, my mind racing with possibilities. I'd been betrayed by the person I trusted most, but somehow, sitting in my truck at a red light, I realized I wasn't devastated. I was angry. And anger, I was about to learn, could be a very useful emotion. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, a spare bedroom I'd converted years ago, and started doing what I should have done months earlier, paying attention. Sabrina didn't come home until Saturday afternoon. She walked in like nothing had happened, carrying grocery bags and humming under her breath. The audacity of it was almost impressive. We need to talk, she said, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. I figured we'd talked enough last night. Jack, be reasonable. These things happen. People grow apart. We can handle this like adults. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. When had she started wearing makeup to the grocery store? When had she started buying clothes that were a little too young for her? When had she stopped being the woman I'd married and become this stranger? What do you want, Sabrina? I want us to separate amicably. I'll move in with my sister for a while, and we can work out the details. What about Emma? Our daughter was a senior in high school, planning for college. She's almost 18. She can choose where she wants to live. The casual way she dismissed our daughter's feelings told me everything I needed to know about Sabrina's priorities. And the house? The business? Our life? We'll work it out fairly. I nodded like I was considering it. I need some time to think. Of course. Take all the time you need. After she went upstairs to pack a bag, I called my buddy Reggie. We'd known each other since high school, and he tended bar at Murphy's, a dive on the east side where people minded their own business. Jack, what's up, man? I need to talk to someone. You working tonight? Yeah, but it's slow. Come on down. Murphy's was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of regulars who'd been sitting on the same stools for 20 years. Reggie was behind the bar, a big guy with graying hair and hands that had seen their share of fights. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know. Part of me wants to just let her go and be done with it. And the other part? The other part wants to make sure she doesn't get away with it. Reggie poured himself a shot and knocked it back. You know what your problem is, Jack. You're thinking like a victim. Stop thinking like a victim. What do you mean? I mean, she's been planning this for months. She's got her story ready, her boyfriend lined up, probably a lawyer too. You're playing catch-up. He was right. While I'd been going to work every day and living my life, Sabrina had been orchestrating my destruction. So what do? You get smart. You gather information. You find out who this Brandon guy is, what his story is, how long this has really been going on. Knowledge is power, Jack. I spent the rest of the weekend doing exactly that. It's amazing what you can learn about someone when you put your mind to it. Social media, public records, a few carefully placed questions to mutual friends. Brandon Mitchell, 34, married to a woman named Jessica, 2 kids. He worked at the same office complex as Sabrina, sold insurance for a living, drove a red BMW that he was probably still making payments on, lived in a subdivision on the north side of town, the kind of place where people cared more about their lawn than their neighbors. I also did some digging into our finances. Sabrina had been careful, but not careful enough. There were charges I didn't recognize, cash withdrawals that didn't make sense, a credit card I didn't know about. By Monday morning, I had a pretty clear picture of what had been going on. Sabrina had been planning her exit strategy for months, maybe longer. She'd been moving money, building a case for why she deserved half of everything I'd worked for, and setting up her new life with Brandon. The problem was, she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I'd go quietly. I was at the shop Monday morning when my phone rang. It was Helen. Jack, I've been thinking about Friday night. Yeah, me too. I want you to know that I'm on your side in this. What Sabrina did was wrong, and I won't stand for it. I appreciate that, Helen. I also want you to know that I'll testify on your behalf if it comes to that. About the lying, about using me as an alibi. Whatever you need. That was unexpected. Helen had never been my biggest supporter, but apparently, she had her limits. Thank you. That means a lot. She's my daughter, Jack, but she's wrong, and I won't be part of covering it up. After I hung up, I sat in my office at the back of the shop and made a list. Not a to-do list, but a list of everyone who'd been affected by Sabrina's choices. Me, obviously. Emma. Helen. Brandon's wife and kids. Even some of our mutual friends who were going to be forced to choose sides. Sabrina had started a war, but she'd forgotten something important. I knew how to finish things. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Not just any lawyer, but the best divorce attorney in town. Margaret Chen had a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and expensive. I figured I was going to need all 3. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the information you sent over. This is definitely not a simple separation. What do you mean? I mean, your wife has been planning this for some time. The financial irregularities, the separate credit accounts, the systematic documentation of marital problems. This isn't spontaneous. So what's my position? Legally? You're in better shape than you think. The adultery gives us leverage, especially with her mother willing to testify about the deception. Financially, we can trace where the money went and make a case for reimbursement. And realistically? Margaret was quiet for a moment. Realistically, this is going to get ugly. Your wife has been preparing for war. The question is whether you're ready to fight back. I thought about Sabrina humming in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. I thought about Brandon, probably telling his buddies about his hot affair with a married woman. I thought about Emma, who was going to have to live with the consequences of her mother's choices. I'm ready. Good. Because we're going to need to move fast. I suspect your wife is going to file first, and she's going to try to control the narrative. Margaret was right. Sabrina filed for divorce that Thursday, claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for spousal support, half the business and primary custody of Emma. Her petition painted me as an inattentive husband who'd driven her away through neglect. But I was ready for her. By Friday, Margaret had filed our response, complete with evidence of adultery, financial misconduct, and a request for full custody based on Sabrina's abandonment of her parental responsibilities. The war was officially on. Emma found out about the divorce papers when she came home from school on Friday and found them on the kitchen table. I'd planned to talk to her first, but Sabrina had beaten me to it. "Dad, what's going on?" Emma stood in the doorway of my office holding the papers. At 17, she looked more like Sabrina every day, but she had my stubborn streak. "Your mom and I are getting divorced, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She said you've been spying on her, that you hired a private investigator." I set down the invoice I'd been reviewing and looked at my daughter. "Is that what she said?" "She said you've been tracking her phone and following her around. She said you're trying to take everything from her." "What do you think, Emma? Do you think I'm the kind of person who would do that?" Emma sat down in the chair across from my desk. She'd been doing her homework in this office since she was 8 years old. She knew me better than anyone. "I don't know what to think. Mom's really upset. She's crying all the time." "I'm sure she is. Divorce is hard on everyone." "Is it true about the other man?" I'd been dreading this question. "Yes." Emma was quiet for a long time. "How long?" "A few months, apparently." "And you just found out?" "Last Friday night." Emma processed this information. "So, when she was working late all those times?" "Yeah." My daughter started crying then, and I came around the desk to hug her. She felt small in my arms, like she had when she was little and had nightmares. "I'm sorry, Em. I know this is hard. Why couldn't she just talk to you? Why did she have to lie?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense to the rest of us." Emma pulled back and looked at me. "What's going to happen now?" "I don't know yet, but whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay." That weekend, Emma stayed with me while Sabrina moved in with her sister. The house felt different without Sabrina's presence, quieter, but also more peaceful. Emma and I ordered pizza and watched old movies, something we hadn't done in months. On Sunday, Emma asked if she could go see her grandmother. Helen had called and asked if Emma wanted to come over for dinner. "Of course. You want me to drive you?" Actually, Grandma said she wanted to talk to both of us. Helen's house smelled like pot roast and fresh bread when we arrived. She hugged Emma tight and gave me a nod that somehow conveyed both sympathy and determination. Over dinner, Helen told Emma the truth about Friday night, about Sabrina using her as an alibi, about the lies, about the betrayal of trust that went beyond just the marriage. "Your mother made choices, Emma. Bad choices. But that doesn't mean you have to suffer for them. I just don't understand why she couldn't be honest." Helen reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I." After dinner, while Emma was in the living room watching TV, Helen and I cleaned dishes in the kitchen. "How are you holding up, Jack?" "Better than I expected, actually. I think I was ready for this before I even knew it." "And the legal stuff?" "It's going to be messy. Sabrina's asking for a lot." Helen dried a plate with more force than necessary. "She's not getting my house." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know my daughter. She's probably counting on inheriting this place someday, using it as part of her financial planning. But I'm changing my will. Everything goes to Emma now." I stopped washing and looked at her. "Helen, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. I won't reward dishonesty, and I won't enable her to hurt you more than she already has." That night, driving home with Emma, I realized something had shifted. Sabrina had expected everyone to just accept her version of events, to go along with her narrative of being an unhappy wife who'd found love elsewhere. Instead, she was discovering that actions have consequences. The next week brought more revelations. Margaret's investigator had been busy, and the picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Sabrina and Brandon had been meeting for months, not just at hotels, but at his office, at restaurants around town, even at our house when I was at work. "She brought him to our house?" I asked Margaret during our meeting. "According to the neighbor's statement, yes. Mrs. Patterson saw a red BMW in your driveway several times when you weren't home. Mrs. Patterson was our 70-year-old neighbor who spent most of her day watching the street from her front window. I'd always found her nosiness annoying, but apparently it was going to work in my favor." "What else?" "Brandon's wife filed for divorce yesterday. Apparently she hired her own investigator after she got suspicious. She's naming Sabrina as a co-respondent. That meant Sabrina was about to be sued by Brandon's wife for alienation of affection. In our state, that was still a valid legal claim, and it could be expensive." "How expensive?" "Depends on what they can prove in terms of financial damage to the marriage, but potentially 6 figures. I felt a grim satisfaction. Sabrina had thought she was so clever, planning her exit strategy while I was obliviously working, but she'd forgotten to plan for getting caught. The real blow came the following week. Emma had been staying with me most of the time, only seeing Sabrina for dinner once or twice. On Wednesday, Emma came home from one of those dinners looking upset. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Mom wants me to talk to her lawyer. She wants me to say that you've been working too much, that you're never home, that she's been taking care of me by herself." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that wasn't true. You've been to every school event, every parent conference. You taught me to drive. You helped me with my college applications." Emma sat down on the couch next to me. "She got really mad when I wouldn't agree to talk to her lawyer. She said I was being manipulated by you. I'm sorry she put you in that position. Dad, I need to tell you something. Last month, when Mom said she was working late, she asked me to call her office if you asked where she was. She said to tell you she was in a meeting." My daughter had been made complicit in her mother's lies. That crossed a line I didn't even know existed. "You don't have to protect her anymore, Em." "I know. I don't want to." That night I called Margaret and told her about Sabrina's attempt to coach Emma's testimony. "That's a mistake on her part," Margaret said. "Trying to involve a minor child in building a false case is something the judge won't appreciate. What's our next move? We go on the offensive. I think it's time to let Sabrina know exactly what we've uncovered." The next morning, Margaret sent Sabrina's lawyer a comprehensive package of evidence: phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, witness statements, and photographic evidence of Brandon's car at our house. Sabrina called me that afternoon, screaming, "How dare you hire people to spy on me? This is harassment, Jack." "No, Sabrina. This is called consequences. You're trying to destroy me. I'm trying to protect what's mine. There's a difference. I want to see Emma. She's at school, but you're welcome to call her if she wants to talk to you." There was a long pause. "She won't take my calls." "Then maybe you should think about why that is." Sabrina hung up on me, but I knew the message had been received. Her carefully constructed narrative was falling apart, and everyone could see what she really was. The war was far from over, but for the first time since this started, I felt like I was winning. The call came from Tom Bradley on a Thursday morning while I was under the hood of a '98 Camaro. Tom and I had been friends since college. He was the best man at my wedding, godfather to Emma, and someone I'd trusted with everything for over 20 years. "Jack, we need to talk." Something in his tone made me wipe my hands and step away from the car. "What's up, Tom?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me for lunch?" We met at Denny's, a place we'd been going to for years whenever we needed to talk about something serious. Tom was already there when I arrived, looking uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before. "So, what's this about?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Tom fidgeted with his coffee cup. "It's about you and Sabrina. What about us? Look, Jack, I know you're going through a rough time, but some of the stuff you're doing, it's not right." I set down my menu and looked at my oldest friend. "What stuff?" "The private investigators, following her around, trying to destroy her reputation." "Who told you that?" "Sabrina called Linda. She's really upset, Jack. She says you're making her life hell." Linda was Tom's wife, and she and Sabrina had been close friends for years. I should have seen this coming. "Did Sabrina mention why I hired an investigator?" "She said you were having marriage problems, but that doesn't justify—" "She's been having an affair for 3 months, Tom. She lied to me, to her mother, to Emma. She brought her boyfriend to my house." Tom was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure?" I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the evidence Margaret had compiled. Hotel receipts, phone records, photos of Brandon's car in my driveway. Tom studied the information, his expression changing as he realized what he was looking at. "Jesus, Jack, I had no idea. What exactly did Sabrina tell Linda?" "She said you'd grown apart, that you were working too much, that she'd met someone who understood her better. She made it sound like a mutual separation." "And you believed her?" Tom looked embarrassed. "We wanted to believe her. It's easier than thinking someone we've known for 20 years could be that deceptive." "So what happens now?" "Now I go home and tell Linda the truth, and I apologize to my best friend for doubting him." But Tom's apology didn't fix the larger problem. Sabrina had been working our social circle, telling her version of events to anyone who would listen. By the time I started correcting the record, some people had already chosen sides. The next blow came from an unexpected source. Dave Martinez and I had been friends since high school. We'd played football together, been each other's groomsmen, and our families had spent countless weekends together over the years. Dave called me on Friday evening while I was helping Emma with her calculus homework. "Jack, I think we need to take a break from our friendship for a while." "What are you talking about?" "This thing with Sabrina is getting ugly, and Karen and I don't want to be in the middle of it." Karen was Dave's wife, and she'd always been closer to Sabrina than to me. "Nobody's asking you to be in the middle of anything." "Come on, man. You're dragging everyone into court, hiring investigators, trying to take everything from Sabrina. It's not the guy I thought I knew." "The guy you thought you knew is the same guy who's been loyal to his friends for 30 years. The guy you thought you knew didn't deserve to be betrayed by his wife. Look, I'm not saying what Sabrina did was right, but the way you're handling it, how should I handle it, Dave? Should I just let her take half of everything I've worked for and say thank you?" "Maybe you should try to work it out. Go to counseling or something." "She doesn't want to work it out. She wants a divorce so she can be with her boyfriend." Dave was quiet for a moment. "Karen thinks there might be more to the story." "Karen thinks what Sabrina told her. But Karen wasn't there when Sabrina lied to her own mother to cover up spending the night with another man." "I don't know, Jack. This whole thing just feels wrong." After Dave hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. These were people who'd known me for decades, who'd seen me be a good husband and father, who'd watched me build a business and a life through honest work. but they were willing to believe that I was suddenly the villain because it was more comfortable than accepting that Sabrina was capable of systematic deception. Emma looked up from her homework. Was that Uncle Dave? Yeah? He doesn't want to see us anymore? Not right now. Emma shook her head. This is so stupid. They all know what kind of person you are. Sometimes people believe what they want to believe, Em. But not everyone abandoned me. Helen remained firmly in my corner, and her support carried weight with some of Sabrina's relatives. My sister Katie flew in from Denver for a weekend, bringing moral support and a willingness to tell anyone who'd listen exactly what she thought of Sabrina's behavior. I never liked her, Katie said over dinner at Murphy's. She always acted like she was too good for our family. You never told me that. You were happy. Or at least I thought you were. Looking back, I can see you weren't really happy. You were just comfortable. Reggie, who'd been listening to our conversation while wiping down glasses, spoke up. Comfortable's not the same as happy. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show you the difference. The most surprising support came from Brandon's wife, Jessica. Margaret arranged for us to meet at her office, thinking we might be able to coordinate our legal strategies. Jessica Mitchell was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with tired eyes and the look of someone who'd been crying a lot recently. She brought her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman who clearly meant business. I want you to know that I don't blame you for what happened, Jessica said. This isn't your fault. I appreciate that. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. My husband is a serial cheater. Your wife isn't his first affair, just his most recent one. That was news to me. How many others? That I know of? 3. That I suspect? More. Jessica's lawyer spoke up. We're prepared to share information about Brandon's pattern of behavior. It might help both of your cases. Over the next hour, a picture emerged of Brandon as a predator who targeted married women, usually women he worked with or met through business. He'd had affairs with a client, a coworker, and a woman he'd met at a conference. Sabrina was just the latest in a series. Did Sabrina know about the others? I asked. I think so, Jessica said. I think she thought she was special, that she was the one who was going to get him to leave me. And now? Now she's finding out that he's not leaving anyone. He likes having his cake and eating it too. After Jessica and her lawyer left, Margaret and I discussed strategy. This changes things, she said. If we can show that Sabrina was involved with a serial adulterer, it damages her credibility. It makes her look naive at best, predatory at worst. What do you mean, predatory? Think about it, Jack. She pursued a married man with children. She knew he'd cheated before. She didn't care about the damage to his family or yours. That's not the behavior of someone who deserves sympathy. That weekend, Emma and I went to dinner at Helen's house. It was becoming a weekly tradition, a small island of normalcy in the chaos of the divorce. How's school? Helen asked Emma over her famous meatloaf. Weird. Some of my friends' parents have been asking me questions about Dad, about whether he's really as bad as Mom says he is. I looked up from my plate. What do you tell them? I tell them the truth. That you're the best dad I could ask for, and that Mom's the one who messed up. Helen reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. That's exactly what you should tell them. But it's hard, you know? Some of these people have known me since I was little. They should know better. People believe what they want to believe, Helen said, echoing what I'd told Emma earlier. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. As if to prove Helen's point, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Tom Bradley. Linda talked to Jessica Mitchell today. We owe you an apology. Can we take you and Emma to dinner this week? I showed the message to Helen and Emma. Helen smiled grimly. Like I said, the truth comes out. But I was learning that the truth wasn't always enough. Some people were so invested in their version of events that they couldn't admit they'd been wrong. Dave and Karen never called back. 2 other couples from our old social group stopped returning my calls. Sabrina had succeeded in dividing our friends, but she'd also revealed who they really were. The people who were willing to believe the worst about me, without asking for my side of the story, weren't really friends at all. As I was learning, sometimes a crisis doesn't just end relationships, it clarifies them. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday morning in late March, 6 months after that first text message had changed everything. Margaret had scheduled a settlement conference, a last-ditch attempt to resolve things without going to trial. We met in a conference room at the courthouse, a sterile space with fluorescent lighting and the kind of furniture that was designed to be functional rather than comfortable. Sabrina sat across from me with her lawyer, a slick-looking guy named Peterson, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Sabrina looked different than she had 6 months ago. Thinner, older somehow, with the kind of brittle composure that comes from trying too hard to appear in control. Brandon had dumped her 3 weeks after his wife filed for divorce, leaving Sabrina to face the consequences of their affair alone. "Let's get straight to the point," Peterson said, opening a thick folder. "My client is willing to accept a reduced settlement in exchange for a quick resolution." Margaret didn't even look up from her notes. "Define reduced." 40% of marital assets, including the business, plus 5 years of spousal support. I almost laughed. 6 months ago, Sabrina had demanded half of everything plus permanent support. Now she was backing down, but she was still trying to take nearly $500,000 for the privilege of cheating on me. "Countered," Margaret said calmly. 20% of liquid assets, no claim on the business, no spousal support. She can keep her car and her personal belongings. Peterson looked like he'd been slapped. "That's completely unreasonable. Mrs. Morrison contributed to this marriage for over 20 years. Mrs. Morrison also committed adultery, engaged in financial misconduct, and attempted to involve a minor child in perjury. Her contributions to the marriage were negated by her contributions to its destruction." Sabrina spoke up for the first time. "Jack, be reasonable. I'm not asking for everything. I just want enough to start over." I looked at my wife of 22 years, the mother of my child, the woman who'd shared my bed while planning my destruction. "You should have thought about starting over before you started sleeping with Brandon." "That's not fair. Our marriage was already over." "Our marriage was over when you decided it was over. You didn't bother to tell me." Sabrina's composure cracked slightly. "You were never there, Jack. Always at the shop, always working. I was lonely. So you decided to fix that by lying to me for 3 months and bringing your boyfriend to our house." Peterson held up a hand. "Let's stay focused on the settlement terms." "The terms are simple," Margaret said. "Your client takes responsibility for her choices and accepts the consequences. And if we don't accept your offer, then we go to trial, and a judge decides based on all the evidence we've compiled, including testimony from Mrs. Morrison's mother about the deception, testimony from the neighbor about the boyfriend's visits to the marital home, and financial records showing the systematic transfer of marital assets." Peterson whispered something to Sabrina. She shook her head violently. "I want to talk to Jack alone," Sabrina said. Margaret started to object, but I held up a hand. 5 minutes. After the lawyers left, Sabrina and I sat across from each other in silence for a moment. Without the legal buffer, she looked smaller, more vulnerable. "I'm sorry, Jack. I know I hurt you." "Yes, you did. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought Brandon and I had something real." "What did you think was going to happen, Sabrina? That he was going to leave his wife and kids for you? That we were all going to just accept it and move on?" Sabrina started crying then, not the calculated tears she'd used in front of the lawyers, but real, ugly sobs. "I don't know what I was thinking. I was just so unhappy, and he made me feel special again." "So you destroyed our family to feel special. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I felt a moment of something that might have been pity, but it passed quickly. Sabrina had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. The fact that those consequences were worse than she'd expected didn't change anything. Take the deal, Sabrina. It's better than you deserve. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What about Emma? She won't even talk to me. Emma's 17 years old. She's smart enough to understand what you did and mature enough to make her own decisions about your relationship. She's my daughter, too. Then you should have thought about that before you asked her to lie for you. Margaret and Peterson returned, and Sabrina accepted the settlement terms. She would get 20% of our liquid assets, about $60,000, plus her car and personal belongings. No claim on the business, no spousal support, and minimal custody rights since Emma was almost 18 anyway. As we signed the papers, I felt something I hadn't expected, not satisfaction, but relief. It was finally over. That evening, Emma and I had dinner at Helen's house, as had become our tradition. Helen made her famous pancakes, the same ones she'd been making since Sabrina was a child. "So it's finished?" Helen asked, setting a plate in front of me. "It's finished." "Good. That girl made her bed, now she can lie in it." Emma looked up from her pancakes. "What happens now?" "Now we move on. You graduate, go to college, start your adult life. I keep running the business and maybe figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life." "Are you going to date?" The question caught me off guard. "I haven't really thought about it." "You should. You deserve to be happy." Helen nodded in agreement. "Emma's right. You're still young, Jack. Don't let Sabrina's mistakes define the rest of your life." Later that night, sitting in my kitchen with a beer and the signed settlement papers, I thought about what Emma had said. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to think about the future instead of just surviving the present. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart jumped, thinking it might be Sabrina with some last-minute drama, but it was from Tom Bradley. "Congratulations on getting it settled. You handled this with more class than most people would have. Linda and I are proud to call you our friend." Other messages followed. My sister Katie, calling to check on me. Reggie, inviting me to Murphy's for a celebratory drink. Even a few people who'd initially sided with Sabrina, offering awkward apologies and invitations to reconnect. The truth had indeed come out, just as Helen had predicted. Sabrina's narrative of being a wronged wife had crumbled under the weight of evidence, and people were beginning to see the situation for what it really was. But the real victory wasn't in the settlement or the vindication. It was in the realization that I'd survived the worst thing that had ever happened to me and come out stronger on the other side. 6 months ago, I'd been a comfortable but unhappy man, sleepwalking through a marriage that had died without me noticing. Now I was awake, aware, and free to build whatever kind of life I wanted. Sabrina had thought she was destroying me when she sent that text message on a Friday night in September. Instead, she'd set me free. As I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my old life and the possibilities of my new one, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayal can be the best thing that ever happens to you. The pancakes, as Helen would say, were finally served with justice.